At the outset, let's be clear. Aaron has caused such a disturbance in the anti-Scientology movement that a burgeoning community is growing around the central animating notion that Aaron Smith-Levin needs to be stopped. Aaron Smith-Levin is an abuser who preys on women and anyone else unlucky enough to fall into his web of slime. Aaron adds no value other than sending off his flying monkeys on missions to stir up chaos and confusion. He doesn't have the goods.
He's just not entertaining or informative. I mean, that's really the bottom line, right? He doesn't really have anything to add. He's not he's not a thoughtful guy. He's not like, somebody like Alex or Tony Ortega or Chris Shelton, somebody that I learn stuff from. I've never learned fucking anything from Aaron. In fact, I've gotten dumber from watching him because he's told me stuff that's wrong.
I want to be perfectly clear. If you're with Aaron Smith-Levin, if you go on his lives, if you signal boost him, you're officially part of the problem. There's no excuse anymore. There never was any excuse. It never should have gotten this far. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, let me tell you a story. On or about May 18th, 2023, in the early morning hours, Aaron Smith-Levin got into an altercation with a woman he had been sleeping with during the Danny Masteron retrial. Based on what I can reconstruct from publicly available information, this woman reached out to a number of people in the ex-Scientology community to make them aware of this altercation. It's a very important but tricky topic to broach, so I am doing my best to balance informing the public and not reopening any old wounds for the parties involved. It's wild to see Aaron's flying monkeys react to Lindsay Volandry's compelling and gut-wrenching tale. Lindsay opened herself up on stream, as I tried to show in my last video, and was vulnerable enough to share her story of surviving and confronting Aaron Smith-Levin. Somehow Aaron's supporters still bury their heads in the sand. When I saw one of Aaron's followers go all Tammy Wynette and stand by her man despite knowing how this slime works, well, we're beyond the pale.
I don't really recommend watching it. There's no big revelation, smoking gun. No, I mean, she pretty much says that she knew he was married. Some of the things she said, the timeline was like 3 years and 4 years, and I knew and I didn't know. No, there wasn't anything illegal or.
We need to talk about the so-called LA incident, because it is so typical of how Aaron operates, like a bull in a china shop causing all sorts of collateral damage. Let's start by watching a censored version of a short clip that circulated a little on social media. In the clip, Aaron is telling the woman from the LA incident to stop filming, and her phone then tumbles to the ground as Aaron grabs it and pulls it away from her. This act alone, in my state, could potentially be charged as interfering with the report of domestic violence. So Aaron's followers know, or if they don't, they should.
I don't want you to record me. It's for me, so it's not.
The so-called LA incident is also characteristic of an Aaron Smith-Levin drama saga, in that it's actually a few controversies piled into one, because Aaron Smith-Levin is off the chain like the oversized novelty germs in that Simpsons episode, and Aaron Smith-Levin gets away with his slimy behavior because he's sliming everyone all of the time, and it's really hard to focus on just one incident. Aaron Smith-Levin is like Mr. Burns, indestructible because all the novelty germs are piling up at the door in a rush to get in all at once. And just like Mr. Burns, things fall apart. The center cannot hold, and when the dam goes, it is going to explode. I referenced Brandolini's Law briefly in a previous video, but it applies nowhere better than in this situation with Aaron Smith-Levin. Brandolini's Law, aka the BS asymmetry principle, states that the amount of energy needed to refute BS is an order of magnitude bigger than that needed to produce it. There is no excuse for preying on women while you're in LA covering a trial where a Scientology celebrity is accused and later convicted of preying on women. But if you are going to have an affair while in LA to cover a rape trial, how can you justify sleeping with a woman you've never met when you, in the same breath, say you are a target for Scientology dirty tricks? To really drive the point home, this woman was unstable enough for Aaron to call her crazy in his ex post facto justification, and also unstable enough that other people at court clocked her as having some mental health issues right away. I have heard from multiple sources that were in LA for the trial that this woman was not allowed into the court on one occasion, and the woman also spoke out loud at several points when she was in the courtroom watching the trial, and in such a way that it attracted the attention of the bailiff and others. It was obvious to everyone, in other words, that this woman was unstable. Aaron, like a lion at the watering hole, saw this unstable, pretty young woman, and Aaron pounced and allowed this woman into his hotel room in the middle of the most important Scientology-related trial in a generation at least. Maybe the most consequential, although Aaron is doing his best to derail any project not related to his own interests at the moment. Thank God for Ian Rafalco and his excellent live stream Punching Down, link in description, where Ian restreamed Aaron's noxious interview with Andrew Gold, where Aaron gave one version of his account of the LA incident. Aaron is a study in excuse making in the video, making excuses even for past excuses in some cases. Aaron Smith-Levin is incapable of taking accountability. At around 3 hours and 15 minutes into his Punching Down stream, Ian Rafalco reads his texts with Aaron from months prior. Ian was contacted by the woman from the LA incident, and he asks Aaron about her, and Aaron responds with some fascinating detail that differs in one very important respect from Aaron's later account on the Andrew Gold interview. Let's first see how Aaron describes his knowledge of the woman's mental state in his interview with Andrew Gold.
Now, do I think this was a Scientology setup? No, I do not. I've been very consistent about that. I know a lot of people do. I don't. I think it's just a crazy person who behaved in a crazy manner. I don't have all the answers. This is someone who'd been institutionalized before this incident. I had later found out she was institutionalized after this incident.
Now let's see what Aaron told Ian Rafalco when Ian texted Aaron to figure out what was going on with the LA incident woman.
He said, "Yep, the psycho stalker I picked up while in LA. She got kicked out of the courthouse twice by the sheriffs and kicked out of the SPTV meetup by the police."
Aaron tells Ian in a private text that Ian read on stream that Aaron knew that the woman had been removed from the court before they got into a physical altercation. This is so important because it lines up with many other accounts I have seen that I just described above that the woman was obviously unstable, and it also shows that Aaron was aware of this. You couldn't not be aware of it, but thankfully we can nail the door shut on this because Aaron told on himself in his texts to Ian. The other part of the so-called LA incident that I need to cover in this video is the motion for mistrial that Aaron caused. This was a couple of weeks before Aaron's assault on the woman on May 18th. Let me take you back to May 1st. 2023. It's day 10 of the Danny Masteron retrial. The 3 ex-Scientologist women have already been waiting close to 20 years for justice. They've made it through the landmines of an LAPD that has been safe-pointed or compromised by Scientology. They finally got their story reported on in 2017, 6 years earlier, when Tony Ortega broke the story that LAPD was investigating Danny Masteron. They made it through a rocky first trial where the prosecution got off to a shaky start in prosecuting the case. The prosecution didn't spend the time to shape the case into a narrative, and so there was a mistrial where the first jury deadlocked in November of 2022. After the mistrial, Aaron Smith-Levin started a round of witch hunts, targeting journalist Tony Ortega, ex-Scientologist media personality Chris Shelton, and a juror from the first trial that Tony and Chris interviewed. This tore the ex-Scientology community apart, and continues to have reverberations to this day. Aaron Smith-Levin told everyone, in essence, at the end of the first trial, stand aside. I am the only one who can do this right. Aaron pledged to go to LA himself for the retrial, and so, 6 months after the original trial, Aaron Smith-Levin was fulfilling his pledge in a sense by covering the retrial the right way this time. Or at least that was the story he was telling. Then the trial breaks for lunch. And in the hustle and bustle of people moving in and out of the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center, Tony O's coverage burned that name into my brain, Aaron happened to get into a little altercation in the hallway. Big deal, right? Who doesn't get into screaming matches during the most important Scientology-related trial in a generation? This incident is so typical of Aaron because of how much havoc and delay he caused for other people, and at the end of it, he of course learned nothing and blamed others. That's the Aaron Smith-Levin credo, by the way, learn nothing and blame others. You see, it just so happens that Aaron Smith-Levin got into a screaming match about Scientology in front of a good portion of all of the jurors as they were leaving the courtroom during a break in the trial. This caused a motion for mistrial to be litigated and delayed the afternoon's proceedings while the judge and others interviewed the jurors and other witnesses about the altercation and whether or not it would affect their ability to be fair. What I had forgotten until I recently reread Megan Cuniff's excellent coverage of the Masterson retrial was that Aaron's screaming match didn't only derail that afternoon's proceedings, but it caused the jury to be partially sequestered to avoid another incident where the jury could be exposed to nutcases like Aaron Smith-Levin in the hallways. After Aaron engineered a screaming match, the jurors were required to be sequestered on lunch, and they also had to start using a different exit. It's all in QNIF's write-up from a few days later on May 4th, link in description, but it's behind a paywall, which is well worth it, but I'm showing you the first part of the piece on screen now. So Aaron's stands can't even try and say that this is some invention of Tony Ortega, who Aaron has repeatedly slandered while simultaneously plagiarizing his content. That's how Aaron rolls. Just a double-strength pile of toxic sewer ooze that lives on the fear and anguish of others. What's crazy to me is that a lot of Aaron's followers apparently know this story and are cool with it. One account posted 5 or 6 times on my first Aaron Smith-Levin video trying to take issue with my characterization of this disturbance as a screaming match, and just generally they were behaving like a headless flying monkey. All sound and fury signifying nothing. And even crazier still is, this is, like I said, only part of the LA incident. You can find a bunch of really interesting Reddit threads at the time the LA incident went down, where people are getting confused about which incident everyone's talking about because they happen right on top of one another, the screaming match in the courthouse and the other much more damning LA incident. There were several times when I was watching Ian Rafalco's livestream where my jaw hit the floor when Aaron blamed a crisis management company's bad advice on Aaron's statement that where he initially blamed his upbringing in Scientology for him acting like a complete scumbag to women in bars in the Clearwater area twice while he was campaigning for city council. I mean, does this guy need to hire a skywriting airplane with a giant beaming neon banner telling you he has terrible judgment? This is the guy you want to entrust with the responsibility of being the first point of contact for essentially everybody leaving Scientology? Do you feel okay with giving Aaron Smith-Levin a metaphorical blank check to operate the transmission belts of people moving away from the coercive control of Scientology? This has been one of the wildest stories I've ever covered. I feel like I have peered into the abyss on this one. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about Aaron Smith-Levin, and we were bouncing some thoughts back and forth, trying to come to grips with who or what Aaron Smith-Levin is. I started down a branching path of one explanation. Maybe Aaron Smith-Levin is like a shark, I said, trying out this proposition for size. On one level, Aaron Smith-Levin seems to operate like a shark. Is this a guy who is actively planning stuff, or does he just operate on instinct? I floated. He started that Facebook group. He reached out to Lindsay, my friend responded. Then a litany of all of Aaron's planning and conniving followed. It caused me to briefly feel like the ground was falling away like Alice in the Looking Glass. Some people who have interacted with Aaron in person have told me that Aaron stares straight through you when you're having a conversation with him. It sounds like a really creepy feeling because Aaron was scanning the room behind them as they were talking to Aaron. It was like Aaron was more concerned with how the fact that he was having a conversation would appear to others than the conversation itself, if that makes sense. Maybe he has a sixth sense. Maybe he just senses weakness in certain people, and that's how he chooses the people he's going to target, I continued. Still trying to grapple with what animated Aaron Smith-Levin to abuse people. There was a pause, a beat in the conversation. He knows what he's doing, I said. The original pretext of Aaron reaching out to Lindsay was about drug stuff, wasn't it? My friend asked. The point they were making was obvious. Aaron was entirely calculating and seeking out somebody vulnerable like Lindsay. My mind went back to Lindsay. Damn, Lindsay said that on a live, didn't she? I asked. Before I could get an answer, I had a flash of insight. Holy Shinto, I exclaimed. I probably actually said something with a little more verve, a little more mustard. I just realized that I have been trying to cover for Aaron. I've been layering my own justification onto him. He's calculating. The word calculating seemed to thud off the hardwood floor. It was like the sickening thud of a body hitting the pavement at terminal velocity. I was like one of Aaron's exes in a sense, too, trying to cover for some of his behavior by trying to explain it away as if it was a force of nature, like a tornado or a hurricane. No, Aaron's not like that. He's a human being, and he knows too well what he's doing. He was born and raised in a cult, and he's physically out, but mentally in. And I don't even know to what extent he's introspective about any of this, but he knows he is doing bad things because his actions provide an endless catalog of consciousness of guilt. The hiding, the threatening, the priming, starting the foundation, creating a rift with the old foundation so he could consolidate his power like Stalin running a purge. That's all this is. Just another empty husk who is, deep inside, a frightened little boy. Terror, love, and brainwashing.
One day with a Aaron one day.
Can I comment on something?
Yes, please.
I have seen some people speculating that I have some sort of a substance abuse problem or a cocaine problem.